Welcome back, audience. Actually, give me a minute. I'm gonna get my mate. I'm back. Cheers. Boy, do I have a good one for you today. Okay. I think you're gonna like this one. Okay. So today, I'm gonna talk about the nature of reality and the nature of consciousness. And talk about this phenomena of subjectivity, objectivity, and three facets of the mind, and that is gnosis, hypnosis, and analysis. Really, that's just another way of saying alchemy, magic, and might. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to use those terms gnosis, hypnosis, and analysis. Those are the three capacities of the mind. Now, the first capacity, gnosis, sometimes you can call it direct knowing or insight. This is what Krishnamurti was talking about when he said insight. Another word for it is gnosis. Gnosis, Gnosis, gnosis. The G is silent. So, I mean, or you can make it loud. It's up to you, really. I don't care. But the point of this matter is that gnosis must appear spontaneously. It cannot be pre planned and pre recorded memory. Right? And how the hell that information is going to come to you if there is no preconceived memory yet? It has to come from something that is infinite, and that information is produced perfectly to fit your finite reality experience. That's gnosis. This is why this information comes into the reality of knowledge, a reality of memory from the world that is infinite to the world that is finite. That information has never been seen before in this world, right? It's not a memory. This is why AI or any kind of robotic systems do not have the capacity of gnosis. They do not have the capacity of direct knowing because they're working with a reality that is already objectively created. I'm going to get to the point of the phenomenon of objectivity. And so, in order to inject a new information, it has to come from the infinite. That's how evolution and for the matter of fact, any kind of balance and equilibrium can in the world of information can only be maintained if there is a root to that tree of knowledge, the tree of life, so to speak, right? And the root has to be all the way to the source, to the infinite. And how do you, quote unquote, access that? Is through the attention and awareness, as I always talk about. The attention onto the point that is emotionally uncomfortable, and awareness of the periphery, and tuning in between. It's a type of tuning. Tuning probably is the best word to describe. Sometimes people ask questions when the mind does not have an answer, then the answer is silent, and then usually there is that state of consciousness in betweenness, the liminal state between the point and the circle, attention and awareness. Okay? So, and everybody has that capacity to place the attention on the point where there might be emotional discomfort, and become aware of the periphery. It's like a courage and surrender. Again, I'm just repeating myself what I said before, but I just wanted to send a message in case somebody new is listening, of how do you do the alchemy. You don't need to do it. You don't need to know. Well, to start, you don't need to know anything else besides the point in the circle. If your book is just one point in a circle, and you understand that what it means, that there's a capacity to put attention and become aware of the periphery and tune into that in betweenness, every negative emotional state will be fused back into the state of infinity and lead to the state of peace and bliss. I'm just using these words to describe that state of consciousness. Okay, and that's how you alchemize. That's the principle of alchemy. And I made this video before about, I called it the key to the kingdom of God, and it was just like a point in a circle, and that's it. That's all you need. If you start from there, you say like, wait a second, don't I need to know how else, how my consciousness works in other ways and stuff like that? Don't I need to gather knowledge or memory in order to navigate this world in a more optimal way? And the answer is no, because everything that from the outside that you learn is going to be knowledge that's already been introduced into this objective reality and is not your subjective experience of it being directly. I read the books, and I read these things that said, okay, there's this God, soul, mind, body, right? Or they said causal reality, astral reality, physical reality. Or they said plasma, phase, matter. And there's all sorts of schools of thought to describe that thing. And I read it then, but that didn't mean anything to me, because it's just like, okay, it's nice model. But when you go through the alchemical process, these things come to you in a direct experience. It's such a clarity that is like, and you discover it yourself, and then you can look at it like, I know what these guys meant. But the thing is that, like, without somebody inviting you to the alchemical path, that little model is not really useful. It's actually just harmful. This is why, like, everything that I'm talking about will not work for you unless you are actually going a path of alchemy. And I mentioned before, there's a feminine and there's a masculine path, and there's a reason why you incarnated as a female body or a male body for this specific reason. Because you wanted to learn more love or more wisdom, and that's why you selected. That's how you select what you prefer. It's not like you go into the female body and say like, I want to learn wisdom. That's not why. You see what I'm trying to say? This is not really talked a lot about, but the gender is a huge deal. It's basically the entire the pathway of lessons. You, male and female, both gonna arrive at the same conclusion, but through different paths. If you don't, like I said in the previous video, again, I'm repeating myself, but if you don't do this, you're gonna put back into your place and say, that's not why you came here. Yeah, that's great. You went through, let's say, the feminine or the masculine way, but here we are. We put you back in a position because you have not learned the wisdom if you went through the path of love. And this is why, like, this lovey-dovey kumbaya thing is not enough. Love cannot be sustained without wisdom. And so this is why I reject this idea when people say, well, depends what they mean by love, but if they really mean love being that openness, that compassion, that is enough. It's like saying that having a shield is enough to win a war. No, you have a sword. You have to have a sword and the shield, both. And in between those, that's the capacity to overcome the matrix. In between those two. Okay? Now, So that's what I say about the Gnosis. It's a direct knowledge and direct experience. It pops up spontaneously. And when it does come with like this very powerful realization. It's like, and the energy too. And that's Gnosis. Okay? Not to confuse with channeling, not to confuse receiving messages with some, some entity and stuff like that. Nope. That comes from the infinite. It's not an entity. Entity is something that is already formed in the finite. Direct knowing, Gnosis. Okay? Now we're going into the world of the mind. Gnosis comes from the soul. Now, as you go into the mind, then hypnosis is another phenomenon. Hypnosis, in this case, describes a state of consciousness in which there is a process of programming that's taking place. It also includes, in this particular example, as I'm describing, it I use this as an umbrella term to include all astral phenomena: imagination, astral projection, out of body experience, lucid dreaming, all of these subjective experiences. I'm doing the bunny ears for the reason, and you'll see why. All right, so the subjective experience and the phenomena of the hypnosis. Now, I have to say something about this. If you, some people say, let go of the reality the way it is. If you're already receiving the direct knowing, that is kind of enough, to live life. I do not agree with this because, yes, in the essence, everything is just a soup of happening, and everything feels like bliss and peace at that state of consciousness. And so, a lot of you know schools of thought leave it at that, and they say, "Well, you reached the liberation, so that's it." No, that's not it. That's just the beginning. You just turned on. Now you have a capacity to make the change. It was all along about the change. It's all along about redreaming the world, right? Just because you have that capacity to redream the world and not using it doesn't mean it's going to happen. You have to activate the mind, the dreamer in you, to begin making those changes. But this time, because you're going through the alchemical process, your visions are not going to be partial, and they're going to be so-called holistic. So your programming of the reality itself is going to be holistic. Great. It's like, maybe, I don't know if it's a good example, it's like comparing the Mac, and maybe these days are not, but like they used to be when they started. Mac had elegance. Mac had that capacity of that, you know, sort of like magical structuring that somehow everything kind of fits together. It had that elegance. And PCs, everything is kind of, hammered in, and it's just crashing all the time, right? So that's like an example when somebody's working with the direct knowing and creating from the direct knowing, and somebody who does not have direct knowing and trying to Frankenstein. And that's the difference between the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. Okay? That's an error when somebody is trying to create the reality and program the reality in that thing called manifestation, without the alchemical process first. What they do is a sin. You can call this original sin, because this reality permits this error. Why does it permit this error? Because it takes the growth of wisdom otherwise, if this error cannot be made, there's no challenge, right? But this error is allowed to be made in order to be corrected, right? Now, we're going a little bit into the world of analysis, because usually what happens when you have that negative emotional response to the experience outside you, like I said, there's two ways. One is alchemizing that thing, because there's this like pain or pressure type of response inside of you. It's a type of desire, and so you can alchemize that and find that contentment behind it. Right? That's the first thing that you do, and then you don't manifest anything with your imagination uh, to fix that fact that you are in pain and suffering. You are creating from the harmonic and the holistic state of consciousness that you already are. And I mean, this is what's been communicated by the Eckhart Tolle and alike, that you got to create from the fullness of life, not from the lack. Because if you create from the lack, you Frankensteining something. Something's gonna come into your life and it's gonna work for a little bit, but it's gonna crash because it doesn't have the elegance. Okay, and the reason you do that is because you're using analysis rather than gnosis to deal with that suffering. Because analysis comes in and says, oh, wait a second, all right, so you feel bad, but wait a second, if we can get this thing, if we can get this outside of us external thing to be like this, and it might be like a, whatever, maybe car, relationship, or whatever, if we can have that picture in front of me like that, then it could make me feel good. And then what happens is that you create that picture inside of you, and it acts like a drug. It pacifies it for a little bit, but then you crash again, and then you need another one, and so you're in that negative cycle. This analysis is not used for that. This is why I completely and utterly reject the whole fucking field of psychology. Pardon my French. And the French listening to this going like, whoa, what did we do? Anyway, it's just a figure of speech. So, but I'm cutting it off. I'm cutting the head of this beast that is original sin. Okay? And you don't need any knowledge of psychology. This is why there's not a single person who are studying psychology is going to be close to living life in a direct way and ending suffering. It's just not going to happen. Just not how the consciousness works. Okay? And you can say, well, isn't there any kind of point? No, there is no point. I mean, as you're going through life, the archetypes will appear to you, and then you may want to read like somebody who wrote the book, but that book is not going to be like they say that map is never territory, right? There's going to be someone else's map, and if you look at this map, there could be the ambient of the place could be like direct experience, right? But you do not know the ambient of the place by looking at the piece of paper. Okay, that's why you're gonna end up drawing your own map, right? But that map, if it's good, is gonna say begin your journey here. And that's what I saw. But you begin your journey. You don't study. That's the way. Another thing, paralysis of analysis, is why? It's because you lack courage. There's a lack of courage, and the lack of courage of putting your attention where it hurts. And so then there's a stuckness in this thing. Okay, so we're cutting off this at this level and saying that hypnosis is like a double-edged sword. You can create from direct knowing and gnosis and create that reality in the form that works, right? But there is a specific type of programming of the reality that you are not only that have to do, you are obligated to do this in order to complete the puzzle and play this game of life as it's meant to be played. At this point, I was very careful not to make this conclusion too fast, because I was thinking about what about the free will. But upon direct seeing, I can see that there are only two wills. There is a will of the matrix, right? Which is uh, okay. I'll get to this, but in this particular case, the matrix should not govern the reality, right? You may ask, well, what's the point of the matrix? The point of the matrix is only to govern the physical reality. So you say, if the matrix is in charge of your consciousness, then that's ego. And you're going to have beliefs, tree of knowledge in your soul. But the tree of knowledge is not supposed to be in your soul. The tree of knowledge, which is a type of memory, is supposed to be only in your brain and the physical body, in your avatar. So if the matrix is in charge of your consciousness itself, or your psyche or soul, then you have so-called ego. If it's in charge only to manage your avatar, which is your physical needs, right, survival, like if there's a threat to your physical survival, you defend yourself instinctually, and you have a right to do so. That's where the matrix is supposed to be functioning. Okay, and but if there's no emotional entity, then nothing that's going on outside you that doesn't touch your body hurts you. Nothing hurts you. That's how we know that you have no, I shouldn't say, because yeah, I should say that you basically live directly and you have no ego. But I have to be a little bit careful here, because okay, I'm going to get to this other thing, that there is such thing as from the belief to the pretend. Some time ago I made that video, that pretending that you do have ego can be fun, and it has the purpose of fun, humor, and all these other things. So there is a purpose to pretending that you do have ego. It's for the sake of humor and stuff like that. But there's nothing there. But you see what I'm trying to say? For the sake of humor, it's fun to pretend that when you don't have ego, to pretend that you do. It also helps you to function in the society where other peoples are functioning from the egos. You can blend in with a sly smile on your face and function in that, with that sly smile, so they can understand you. Because if you enter the society or the group of people with no ego, you can do whatever you want, of course, but you can notice very quickly that you freak them the fuck out. Like, you see what I'm trying to say? So sometimes you kind of have to pretend that you do have ego, so then you don't kind of pull the rug out of them and kind of freak them out. Sometimes it's not necessary to freak them out. Sometimes it is, but it's up to you. So that's what I just wanted to say. But there's not like that is actual ego. There's like a simulation of the ego that takes place, but it's not serious. That's why now we're going to from the serious to not serious. And then there's also a distinction between subjective, objective, and delusion and illusion. Everything is an illusion from that state of hypnosis. Basically, since like we hallucinating the reality? Yes, we are hallucinating the reality. And so there's almost infinite ways that I can hallucinate the reality. Yes, there's almost infinite ways that you can hallucinate reality subjectively. Okay, and we're gonna get to the objective in a moment. But there's almost infinite ways that you can hallucinate reality subjectively. It is almost like you are picking out the memory that you want to live. Imagine that imagine that all of the memories and all the type of experience and every single permutation that can happen outside of you already exists as a type of memory. The Imagine every single pixel in your physical reality, all the sensations, all the emotions, all the thought patterns. Of course, it's almost infinite permutations, but every single one already exists as a memory. And through the state of hypnosis, which is a sort of like it's a type of state of consciousness. It's a combination of gamma and theta states. Gamma is painting the reality, and theta is putting you in a state of consciousness where that reality is programmable. And so that's why the lucid dreaming, that's why I love lucid dreaming, because it's like this perfect state. You are creating and playing at the same time. You're creating, you see, like, okay, that's what I want to experience, poof, and you're experiencing that. You're programming that, and you have a direct experience of it. This is why that state is magical. So you're creating reality like that. Okay? Now, distinguishing delusion from the illusion. Everything is an illusion. This is why, like, when people are saying, like, hey, everything is illusion. In this illusion, there's an illusion that there is a thing, that there is a word, that there is a doer, like an agent, that there is rewards, and that there is punishments. Yes, everything is an illusion, of course. But the point of it all, just because it's an illusion, you don't just leave it be. You play with it. That's what it's for. You see what I'm trying to say? And I think this is where, like, that conclusion was when all these, Zen masters and whatever discovered, it's like, hey, nothing is real, so you kind of let it go. No, you discovered everything is not real, so then you start playing with it. As long as you have that alchemical direct gnosis, direct knowledge, you earn the stripes to play with reality the way you want. Why did you earn the stripes to play reality the way you want? Is because every single programming of the reality is going to be considering the whole system. It's not going to create a code that is kind of jagged and breaks. It's a bad code, right? This is why I say, like, all these Web 2.0 applications, the corporate applications, are just bad code, because they're breaking the primary principle, which by the way, corporation and ego is an equivalent thing. Just like the ego or matrix, it's supposed to be only in charge. Matrix, corporation, ego, they're all kind of equivalent, with some nuances. But if you place the corporation, matrix, or ego to be only in charge of the tangible, physical factors, what's going to happen? It's going to be doing its job where it's supposed to do. This is why corporations should not be allowed to govern the food, drugs, software, information, monetary system. What else? Basically, to make the long story short, it's supposed to be only be in charge in production of the tangible goods, hardware, and leave the software as decentralized, including all these online portals, which is, again, corporation in charge of information. It's a no. It's a broken code. It's a code that does not consider the big picture of the society. Okay, and that's why it's not sustainable. That's why a corporation is an ego, and unless the corporation is in charge of producing tangible goods. This is why you can see some people who are, you see, sometimes, like, someone may be running the corporation that's producing hardware, but then they also want that software control, and so then they go into the controlling some sort of application of software as well. That is breaking the universal law. And the reason they do this is because they don't have direct knowing that you can do this. You have to release the code that fits the whole thing. This is why I envision the shrinking of the matrix into corporate industry. It's already happening because robots are already replacing people, right? People are no longer interested in like corporate drugs. They're looking for the natural remedies. Hooray. Um, More and more people are using Web 3.0 applications, even though it's just the beginning, but little by little, people kind of sick of the corporations and their fucking subscriptions and their fucking upgrades and pluses and all these other types of manipulative ways of people keeping people in the hamster wheel. So, and so the reality is that it's an end of the corporate world, and it's going to shrink, and is going to be only put where it belongs in production of the hardware. Okay, that's why we can't say that corporation has no purpose. That's why we can't say that the matrix has no purpose, and we can't say that the ego has no purpose. It has a purpose only on the tangible physical matters. That's where the tree of knowledge is supposed to be used. Okay, so to speak. Now, so whoever was creating this reality clearly was not quote unquote initiated or educated on the reality creation. It was some sort of a muppet who honestly was just not a good programmer of the reality. And I'm not saying like you can call it evil. Yes, it is. Evil happens whenever there is a programming of the reality that is not considering the whole picture. It creates the dead end, or like a virus thing. Okay, that's why they do not have authority to create the reality, and that authority, by the way, is being taken away from them. The more and more people go to the way of the alchemy, the less and less their magic works. They don't understand why it stopped working. It's because they're not receiving power anymore. So, because that power is not given to them anymore, they don't have power, because people who did not go to the path of the alchemy and they try to fuck with the reality only through the black magic, which is that's why it's a delusion. Everything you can see that the way the money works is a delusion. Everything that is not holistically programmed is a delusion. So what I'm trying to say with this is that the people who did not go on a path of Gnosis and decided they want to have power and influence, they ended up having none. Why? It's an illusion of control, because they end up so to speak selling their soul, and they ended up the matrix code itself. And the matrix, if you are an alchemist, the entire matrix is under your control, including all the muppets that quote unquote run the world, the deep state, cabal, whatever you want. These are individuals, entities that have no power at all. They have no connection with the source. They have to steal that energy somehow. But when you don't give that energy to them, when you alchemize everything and you keep that energy all for yourself, and you keep that authority all for yourself, authority over your own reality, and it's not just words. There has to be a state of consciousness within you that is vibrating and doing its thing. It's not just because you say that, oh, I'm an, as sometimes on these videos, like, hey, don't you know that you're God? Just forget about everything. You're God. So, everything's going to be all right. Jesus, it doesn't mean anything. You can say whatever words you say. even I am or I am God, it's just like a fucking line of code. It means nothing. The state of consciousness that you're in does the job. You don't have to say anything. And whatever, if you do have the authority over your reality, it depends on, have you alchemized and you have discovered these gems, and then you gain the authority over the entire matrix, including. So if you want, like I said, you got to you can't eliminate them, because you can't eliminate the matrix. Matrix has a purpose, but you got to shrink their influence and employ them to producing technology, hardware and technology. That is the purpose of the Cabal, is production of technology. And they will have a purpose and they will be employed in doing that. And so this is why it's going to work like a like a fascist organizations, but all they're going to be doing is just producing technology, but maybe have like illusion of control, but there's not going to be, they don't have any control. That's what I'm trying to communicate here. Do not believe in this power that they have in a deep state or the Cabal. As I explain here, they do not have the authority over the reality. They need to steal the energy. And if you don't give them energy, and you give them energy when you say like, oh, it's the Cabal controlling everything, you give them energy, you freaking create the reality the way you want it. If you're an alchemist, that's what's going to happen. Look, the matrix cannot do anything because you're using the matrix code itself for your alchemical process. So look, all these ideas of like being attacked, and these are just natural energetic cycles that are taking place, and is giving you the opportunity to alchemize. And the more it's bringing to you, the more you alchemize. Thank you very much. And as long as you stay on your throne, in the alchemical realm, so to speak, their magic do not work because you're not giving any energy. And because the reality, okay, now I'm going to go into this idea of subjectivity. Objectivity is a shared subjectivity. Okay, you have to be, understand how the illusion happens. Because if you are, let's say, in a lucid dreaming state and you are imagining the reality and you create what the fuck you want there, right? And you can say, well, that's subjective, that's not really objective. If you do that consistently, which means you contribute the energy towards that type of outcome, and you love lucid dreaming about specific thing, next thing you notice that somehow is being formed in your outer reality, which is like a 3D, a waking state of consciousness, right? And so now, what you would consider objective, because it's not only you, now you can invite all your friends and say, look, I got this thing. And so other people can look at this thing, and now it's an objective reality, right? But it is 2 or 3 or 4 more people looking at the same thing, hallucinating this reality in the same way. Okay, it's shared hallucination. So imagine if you have a group of people, let's say 100 people, and 80 people looking at, say, and one thing and say, this is the red object. And 20% of people say like, no, that's not red, that's orange. But 80% of people say, no, this is red. So is this reality right now subjective or objective? You see how it's fluid? It's actually what you call consensus reality. If 80% of people agree upon that it is red, then most likely it's going to fall back onto the others, because others going to be influenced by that belief of the collective and shared hallucination. And so that will end up being red for everybody, literally going to end up being red. I know that this is a little bit obviously going to the magic realities, but in your lucid dreams, you can say, this is red, and you'll see it as red. This is orange, and you'll see it as orange. Just like that. Okay? This reality is nothing more but one of those lucid dreams with the rule set placed upon it. I'll give you an example. Now, imagine you astrally project at night, and you go to the reality and you create it from scratch, and you say, okay, this is just, let's say, ocean and a beach house, and whatever, and that's pretty much my beach house in astral reality. And then you set the rule sets. You say, okay, that's how the ocean works. That's how the physics works here. I can't walk through walls here. The physics is basically solid and stuff like that. So if somebody else projects into that dream, the world that you created, and they can project this if they know the so-called loci, or you bring them there, now there's two beings that are watching that reality. Okay, now it's becoming more of a consensus. Now, you're probably going to experience a little bit different than they are, but there's going to be a lot of overlap, which is already happening here. But if you really look closely in this 3D reality, you'll see that some people will say like, oh, I remember that being like this. And you say like, well, actually, no, I remember being like that. There's not exact overlap. The subjective reality is still functioning. Okay? And only what you agree upon with each other, that becomes so-called objective reality, which is shared subjectivity. All objective reality is shared subjectivity. This is why there's this fungibility in even the laws of nature. Now, of course, because there's a lot more minds that believing this to be the case, then it's a little bit more solid. But just like a giraffe was able to grow its long ass neck just by through having intent of reaching higher and higher fruit, by dreaming about this over and over again, through the subjective reality influencing so-called objective reality. Okay? And now you're looking at giraffe and you can't argue that it has a long neck. Let's say you get 3, 4, 5, 6 people to project into your dream beach house in astral reality, and all the laws work according, to the rule set that you've set. And they project there, and they try to walk through wall, and it doesn't work. And you see, and they agree that okay, actually they could break that thing and say, look, I don't agree that I can't walk through wall, and they can break that. But if they agree with you that like, okay, this is the solid and physical reality, everything will become more dense because of the belief system, right? And that is shared hallucination. That's why this reality is shared hallucination. I can't put my finger through this because it has a rule set that's been solidified, right? And everybody who are in this reality agreed that that's how it works, and so on and so on. But okay, now you may say that, wait a second, so that beach house and the 6 people see everything the way it is there, right? And it works based on the laws that you impose upon it. Isn't it like a mini world? And the answer is yes, it is a mini world. You can go further and you can say, well, actually, let's make this a planet, and let's bring 100 more souls into this, and let's see how it works there, and then create laws and all that stuff, and you see where this is going, and sooner or later you end up having something like this world with this matrix, which is agreed upon reality. And that matrix is the rule set that's supposed to be governing things, but it's programmable. And people have done it. I don't know if you know, like Thomas Campbell. He created Atom's Park. It's an actual place where you can project into and see what that place is like, and see how it all works. And there's a lot of people, because he wrote the book, and there's probably invited a lot of people to project in that reality. And because if a lot of people were believing in that reality, in that, I suspected that reality is very well solidified in and has its own rule set, and it has its own little world, like its own little world. This world is not different. It's just that more massively multiplayer, online multiplayer, role-playing game, MMORPG. And this game is popular, and that's why there's so many souls getting into this game. But you can create your own. And you see how subjectivity works. You can invite people into your reality and say, okay, but this is how the laws work here. Do you want to play this game? Agree upon these laws, and that's how it's going to be. Okay? Why is it important? Because the state called hypnosis is capable of creating subjective reality, but if you continually insist upon that reality to be the case, it turns into objective reality, which is your 3D experience. I mentioned before I was just messing around, creating apples and bananas in my hand. It was just really cool to do this, because you need to learn like a certain type of focus and whatever. But I was just messing around creating apples and bananas in a non-specified environment, where the environment was clearly visible to me, but I did not specify that environment. It was just generated for me, but I could see how it looks like. And I ended up in exact same place, and my neighbor's place, an exact same place, holding an apple and banana in my hand. And I was, you see, from the subjective to the objective. Now I can show that banana and apple to other people, and they say, yeah, this is an apple and banana. And of course, you can fudge the laws a little bit further, but there is a limitation of how much you can fudge them. But you can fudge the laws of the country. You can fudge the laws of the way the culture works. You can fudge them if you continuously dreaming about this. You'll start seeing outside of you things are changing. Because what I'm trying to say, there's only subjective reality, and there's only consensus subjective reality, which is called objective. But you can see how objectivity is an illusion that has been created, that is very fragile and can collapse into completely different reality very quickly. Okay? Like, I mean, even look, like even the place that I am here, 1 month I'm driving by and there's like this type of like sushi restaurant, and the next month I'm driving by and it's a completely different place. It's like, what the hell? Like, am I in a different place? But literally, you can say, well, of course, there's an explanation of why it's a different restaurant right now. Different owner, they put like a different, logos and whatnot. But the reality is that I went and projected into a different version of that town. And then the reality always explains how that happened. Okay? So, what's the moral of the story? Do not have any conflicts with any authority in your reality, because it's your dream, and just keep on dreaming the version that you want to live, and don't give a shit about anything else, because you're going to be putting your energy into enjoying the reality that you're already living. You're in the astral, you're already living the world, rather than going in the astral and fighting entities and fighting all this stuff, which is just giving energy and giving validity to these entities. You go directly into dreaming the way your reality must be working. Astral realities, that's what it's for. You're supposed to be living an ideal life already on astral reality. And maybe, you know, because this is always challenging, this matrix is always challenging by design, not to use astral reality to live your ideal life where you can. It's a misuse of energy. That's what it's for. You know, you just go and you project into the quote unquote memory of you living an ideal life in astral reality, whatever that is, and create your own little world. Every night you can project to that reality and have your own little adventures in that reality. And that's it. There is no much more powerful thing that you can do with your energy. There might be some challenges up to get to that point, all sorts of fears that you got to face, but you do this through alchemy, in order to receive gnosis. And you continue this. And don't let anybody distract you from it. If somebody says, like, oh no, now you have to go, there is this conflict there going on, you have to go there and, put your attention there. But is there a conflict around you in your physical vicinity? No. Then you don't have to put attention there. Go back to imagining what you want. And if you keep on doing it, that illusion of the conflict who was trying to take your attention, you'll see how it's just collapsing under its own weight, because you're not giving it energy. It's all metaphysical law. And this is what I've been learning lately, that I have no enemies. My only responsibility is to alchemize the code of matrix. Because if I don't do this, then somebody's going to be running the script of the matrix, which is going to be in conflict with me. But if I alchemize the script of matrix, no one's going to be in conflict with me in my reality. And of course, to finish, analysis is a type of process that is necessary, again, just with tangible things, not psychological things. This is why you don't use analysis about people. You meet the person and you say, well, that person must be like this. That's already analyzing, because you don't know shit. Right? So you don't use analysis on people. You can use analysis on things, right? And the body of a person is a type of thing, and you need analysis in order to, for example, diagnose some medical problem, whatever. Yeah, you need analysis to do this, but you don't use it on the psyche. You don't say, well, that person, that person looks sketch to me, so You see what I'm trying to say? And then you project some reality onto that person, but you don't know it yet. But you're projecting, you are not analyzing the person. And you may say, well, if I don't analyze the person, then I may get in like kind of danger. No, you don't need to analyze the person at all. Don't use the mind at all. What happens through the direct energy, you'll know this energy through this. It's almost like spontaneously. The energy is just not gonna mix, and the person is just not going to be around you if that not for you. You don't have to analyze anything. You don't have to say that person is like this or that person is going to do that. Analysis is only on the things, not on beings. Okay, I think that's enough. We almost got to an hour today again. But I hope you enjoyed this. And like I said before, um, everything that I'm talking about will only work if you are going through this path of alchemy. Again, I'm just using the word alchemy. You can use any kind of word as long as it means tuning, using your emotional states of consciousness to tune to the infinite. Again, another way of saying it. It's not the mental capacity, it's not physical capacity, it's the capacity of the soul. And more and more people kind of learning this, that it's the easiest thing to do, that in the background of that state, or as I call it, 0 point, suffering is bliss. And that state, I have to tell you, it's not achieved through one day I'm going to be like this. Everyone who has consciousness has the capacity to tune to that state. Everybody. Whether they are, going to do it or not, that's another thing, because it does require a certain type of courage and surrender. And whenever you're nearing toward that 0 point, it may feel like dying, right? Or there might be a little bit like, but then you and you're like, oh shit, oh my god, this has always been here. And really, all my messages can be summarized into that point in the circle. Everything has to start from there. And the point in the circle, by the way, alchemy, that's how it's actually. Um, uh, okay, the circle is the soul, or you can say, okay, let's just use this. The point circle is the soul, the triangle is the mind, and the square is the body. Okay, geometrically, also, that's been used in alchemy. And if you look at the alchemical symbol, you'll find there's a big circle, there's a triangle, there's a square, and there's the small circle. What does it mean? That means the infinite, the big circle, is been brought into the temporal, and that's a symbol of the actual soul, that you have to create. And by that definition, I'm saying that we don't come here with souls. By that definition, we come here with we come here with egos, I suppose. But no, ego is not that. We're coming with the distortions, and then we grow our soul. By the way, I have to say something about this. growing soul, they call it the tree of life, right? It is a little bit like a plant. Why is it like a plant? Because you cannot speed it up or slow it down. It grows automatically upon the well watering. And the well watering is upon being in the background of that stillness or that 0 point or whatever. It grows automatically, it flowers. And you can't be bigger plant or a smaller plant. You can be always in the process of growing. But if you say like, well, I want to be a bigger plant that I am, then you're gonna create a belief, and then you're gonna be in the ego, right? As we always say, like there are sometimes that young, so to speak, souls, right? And they're just beginning. Their challenge may be, you know, I don't know, your puppy had died or something like that. Oh no, why did you use that example? No, but like that is a tragedy of, or your pet, I should say pet. I shouldn't say puppy is too horrible. That's a tragedy that sometimes a growing person experiences, right? And I mean, we all experience that. I have experienced that as well. And there is this emotional thing that you got to deal with it, and there's this opportunity for that growth, right? And so maybe that's your challenge of life, and it's a very little one. And there might be something on completely other end, and might be that you're dealing with the ultimate energies of existential, suffering or whatever. It doesn't matter where you are, the 0 point is available to everybody. Okay? And another thing that what sometimes people call enlightenment, that cannot be sped up or slowed down. It's like a plant, it's growing. That's why, like, somebody's like going onto this and say, well, I want to get enlightened and I'm just going to do my practice for 20 years. You're not going to go any further at all. You're just going to grow in exactly the amount that you set out to grow in this particular lifetime. And the maximum thing that you can do is be authentic, which is living from that spontaneous 0 point state of consciousness. That you cannot do anything more than that. And if you're living in there, and then the challenges comes in like just gentle emotional challenges, and that's your life, then that's the only alchemy that you gotta do. And like I said, if there's some existential and like overwhelming processes, then that's what you gotta deal. For example, if you look at Krishnamurti or other famous figures that meant to be enlightened, you'll see that in their youth they went through absolutely horrendous transitions, deliriums, painful agonies, because they selected to play the big boy game. And if you selected to play, and so they selected to say, like, I want to grow a big ass freaking oak tree. All right, if you're up for it, go grow this big ass oak tree. But that's going to be a lot of energy for you to process, and that's going to be painful. If you want to do that, do that. And so that's what was going on. This is how he realized that people are creating all sorts of structures out of spirituality, and he demolished all sorts of orders, and because he received the Gnosis, direct information, to understand how the reality works. Okay, so that's what we're all here like that. But some of us are just not really good at this game, and those people are usually end up being so-called evil. They're just not good at this game. They bit off more than they can chew. Like, That's the way I see it, because it's very easy to become evil when you decided that you're gonna grow a massive tree, but you don't got balls to process all that energy. The only way you can handle not to have that suffering, you got to start fucking with the matrix, uh, and to get that fix, you become a drug addict. You see, or reality addict, and these people, what you call a cabal, these are losers of the game of life. They're just losers, and I'm not saying this to like even in the demeaning way. I'm just saying that that's just the way it is. They just did not play it right, and they don't have it good. They have it bad. They are in a situation where they process that amount of energy. They may not even be capable to process that amount of energy anymore. And the only way that they could save their soul is to surrender that energy to someone who can, which means that they have to humble themselves and become uh, 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 like obedient to somebody who can break down all that karma that they've created. Okay? And like I said, after that process takes place, these people are like babies because that's what they've been all along, you know? But at least if they start being a baby and then they will grow as it's supposed to be. They're just like a little tree of life, really. And there was a huge tree of knowledge. But when the tree of knowledge burns away, there's just a little plant that maybe now has opportunity to turn into the tree of life. Okay? Hopefully that explains a lot. And I'll see you in the next one. And just remember, do your alchemy, do your magic, and do your might. And do not put your attention on anywhere else besides those things. And if you're a woman, do your devotion, do your obedience, and do your care. And those two archetypes of the wizard and the healer is what's going to redream this world like a piece of cake. Peace. See you next one.